Hello everyone, welcome to today's session. We will be dealing with probability. I wrote probability 101 here on the board. So basically I want us to deal with these three questions in particular, such that we become able to understand the way that the question appears today. What is it that we must do and how are we supposed to tackle these questions? So rather questions of this magnitude. So let's check with the first question. It says, a hotel has 3 vacant rooms. In how many ways can 9 people occupy the rooms if only one person is allowed to enter, or rather allowed per room? So let's check solutions for number 1. So we have 9 people and then we have 3 rooms. In simple ways, or rather what the teacher normally would like you to do is to say, to show that there are 3 rooms. And then in between those 3 spaces, put a multiplication sign. And then we will be saying, out of 9 people, for the first room, we have chances of choosing 9 people. And then for the second room, we can choose from 8 people because one would have already went into the first room. And then from the third room, we can choose from 7 people. And then we just multiply that and then we get our answer. However, I have a very beautiful way of doing it using a formula, because I know people, or rather you enjoy using formulae to solve questions. So the formula goes like this: n factorial all over n minus r factorial. Now, what is our n and what is our r? Our n is the 9, which is the people, and then our r is the 3, which is the spaces given, or rather the spaces around the rooms in this particular case. So how are we going to substitute? We will say 9 factorial all over 9 minus 3, and then we say factorial. So we need to simplify this, of course. We will end up saying 9 factorial in the numerator, and 9 minus 3 is going to give us 6 factorial. Let's also factorize it, or rather simplify it. I will end up saying 9 multiplied by 8 multiplied by 7. Then from 7 going downwards, we can write it as 6 factorial, which is going to be multiplied by 6 factorial. In the denominator, what do we see? We have 6 factorial. And then what can we do with this information? We can therefore say 6 factorial minus, rather, dividing out 6 factorial. And then what is our final answer? Or rather, not the final answer, a step before the final answer, 9 multiplied by 8 multiplied by 7, which is exactly what we have done there on top. Now let's use a calculator to find the final answer. 9 multiplied by 8 and 7, 504 ways. So we will be having 504 ways in which we can, or rather 9 people can occupy this particular 3 rooms. So this is the first question, and this is how you answer it. You can use the first method, kudos. Use the second method, still okay. So we jump to question number 2. You should not hesitate to pause a video where you do not understand, and then make sure that you follow it. And then if you do not, there is a comment section also there. Please do not hesitate to ask any question. Let's check question number 2. In a race that has 15 contestants, how many ways can first, second, and third places be allowed, or rather, awarded? How many people are running? 15. And then how many places are there to be awarded? 3 places. Let's start with the first question, or rather the first method. 1, 2, 3 spaces with multiplications in between. For the first position, how many people can, or rather, have a chance of winning the first position? 15. All of them have a chance of becoming number 1. However, after we have found that the person who comes from in the first position, only 14 people are left to can be position 2. So we'll be say 14. And then after the 14th person, or rather the person who occupied 14th, rather the second position, there are only 13 people who are left to can be chosen, or rather win the competition. So we have 15 multiplied by 14 multiplied by 13. So that is method number 1. Method number 2 would be saying, using my favorite formula, n factorial all over n minus r factorial. So n is the number of contestants. The r is the spaces, or rather the positions, the winning positions. So we'll also substitute it here and say 15 factorial all over 15 minus 3 and then factorial. We'll end up saying 15 factorial. 15 minus 3 gives us 12 factorial. Let's simplify it further. 15 multiplied by 14 multiplied by 13. As we know, from 12 going downwards is 12 factorial because it's 12, 11, 10 up to 1. So I can therefore write it as 12 factorial. And then in the denominator, I know that I got what? 12 factorial. And then what is it that I must do? Cancel out the 12 factorial in the numerator and then cancel out the 12 factorial in the denominator. And what is it that this thing is going to give me? It's going to give me this. 15 multiplied by 14 multiplied by 13. Did we see this before? Exactly. Here. You see? So two different methods, exactly the same answer. But I love this one more. Why? Because it gives me the picture of what is it that is happening. Also, that one is very much clear. So I want to give you variety on how to solve these questions. Now let's use a calculator to get to the final answer. 15 multiplied by 14 multiplied by 13. 2730, which is 2,730 ways in which 15 people can be arranged, or chances of them winning this particular coming position 1, 2, or 3. And I hope it makes sense. Let's jump to question number 3. That question with a purple color. I hope it's purple. Now let's check. A compound has 4 job openings available. A company, sorry. If there are 16 applicants for the jobs, in how many different ways can the openings be filled? So let's check. We have 4 openings and then we have 16 applicants. This is the sad reality in our everyday life, because as you can know, in South Africa, we have job scarcity as far as youth unemployment is concerned. So this is basically the reality. We'll be finding 4 spaces opening in the company. However, there will be an influx of people applying for that particular job. So mathematics, we're trying to do this probability of finding a way on how we can fill, or how many ways can these positions be filled. And then given the number of the applicants can be more than 16. We know the reality of our everyday life in South Africa. Now let's try to tackle this question. So let's put our spaces. We have 4 multiplied. We have 4 spaces. And then in the first job opportunity, there are 16 people we can choose from. All right. And then moving to the second job opportunity, the one that has been hired can no longer apply for the second opportunity. So we will be left with 15 people here. And then in the third position, the first 2 people who were hired cannot apply for the third position. So we'll be left with 14 people who can apply here. And then in the last position, the 3 people who got hired cannot apply for the last position. So we only left with 13 people to can choose from. And then that is basically the whole idea of how you can get to understand, or rather tackle this question with method number 1. Let's try to use it with method number 2 to check if maybe it's going to give us the same answer. So in method number 2, the formula goes n factorial into, or rather divided by n minus r factorial. And then what is our n? It is the number of people. And then r is the positions or the job opportunities that are available. So let's put n as 16 factorial all over 16 minus 4, then factorial. We simplify it, we'll be having 16 factorial all over 12 factorial. Now let's do what we normally do, what I did in the previous questions. I'm going to break 16 factorial into 16 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 14 multiplied by 13. And then we know again, from 12 going downwards, we will only stop at 1. So which simply means that we have 12 factorial. So I can therefore write it as 12 factorial from there. And then in the denominator, I already had 12 factorial. So I write it that way. Now, I'm going to say 12 factorial cancels out 12 factorial. And then I will be left with what? 16 multiplied by 15 multiplied by 14 multiplied by 13. This is exactly that which we did in the first method. And then let's use our calculator to find the final answer. 16, 15, 14, 13. 43, 6, 80. So we have 43,680 ways in which these different job opportunities or other people can be arranged in the 4 opened positions. So this is basically the whole idea on how we can deal with these questions, and then how we must basically have variety or rather ways in which we can solve questions. Mathematics is a very beautiful subject, and it needs you to find different ways in which you can solve questions. In questions of this nature, you can use the first method to get your answer. However, you can prove your answer that is correct with the second method, or you can use the second method and prove it with the first. So I'm going to do a number of questions or rather topics from now until I don't know, such that I can help you to understand all the different concepts from mathematics, physics, chemistry, anything in that department of maths and science. And I hope you understood. If there is any question, feel free to ask. And on YouTube, just hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with anyone else. Thank you very much, and see you soon.